Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everybody to the Breathing for Energy virtual event. I am incredibly excited. I have an absolutely power-packed presentation for you with some really cutting-edge science that very few people, including very few doctors and health practitioners, are even aware of. This is really powerful information. And this is not just going to be a bunch of fluff, or it's not just going to be a bunch of fluff and a sales pitch. My goal here is to give you a ton of actual practical value that has the potential to change your life. And I'm going to give that to you for free in this presentation. I also want to mention that, well, you know what? First, I need to just make sure you guys can see and hear me okay. So let's do that first. I see a lot of people. Wow, we're at just over 5,000 or just right about 5,000 people so far. And I'm sure there's going to be more people joining us in the next few minutes. So that is amazing how much interest there is in this. I am incredibly excited about that. Let me know. Okay, you see Bonnie saying, I can see you. Amanda said, we see and hear you. Perfect. Wonderful. I need to check one more thing. And that is to make sure that you can see my slides. So I'm going to switch over to my slides, and then I'm going to switch back here to make sure to check the chat responses. Make sure you can see that, and then forgive. There's a little 15-second delay or so, so it just takes a minute for me to, from the time I do it until I see your responses. That's just the price you pay for bouncing information off of satellites in the atmosphere to people all over the world. So let me just check this really quick. Okay, allow. And let me make sure. So can you guys tell me if you can see my slides on the screen, please? Slides are visible, looking good. Wonderful. Okay, amazing. So here's what we're going to do. Welcome everybody. So, wow. Okay, let me know where you guys are from. I'll wait for all 5,000 responses. No, I'm just kidding. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to screen share. I'm going to turn off the chat for now. And okay, thank you, Greg, for that info on sound quality. I appreciate that. And I'm going to turn off chat for now, and then I'm going to turn it back on later, and I'm going to take questions. I'm going to do a live Q&A. I'm going to try to take as many questions as possible. Given there's 5,000 people on this call, there might be 6 hours of questions. So hopefully I will try to do as many as possible. Make sure you stick around to the end where I can take all of your questions. And you are absolutely not going to want to miss this. This is truly power-packed, life-changing information. It's not going to be a bunch of fluff. So with all of that said, here we go. So first of all, if you don't know anything about me, I was voted the #1 health influencer of 2020 by the biggest natural health and functional medicine community, the Mindshare community. I am a 2-time best-selling author. I've got a bachelor's in kinesiology. I've recently completed my coursework for my PhD in clinical psychology. Also got advanced certifications in nutrition and fitness and corrective exercise and athletic training and all kinds of good stuff. I'm the creator of the Energy Blueprint, the founder of the Energy Blueprint podcast, and most importantly, I am a certified health nut for the last 25 years. Since I was a little kid, I've been studying as my singular obsession, the science of human health. So first of all, here is a simple 1-minute test that can give you an objective clue as to whether you are in need of this program or not. Okay, whether you truly have dysfunctional breathing. And this is called the BOLT test, or the body oxygen level test. And here's what this tells you. First of all, it tells you if your breathing is optimal or dysfunctional. It shows you your CO2 tolerance. It shows you your cellular ability to extract oxygen and to utilize oxygen. It's a wonderful proxy. It's the best test I found for actually giving you an indication of your body's overall vitality and energy. And it gives you a wonderful objective test that you can do in less than a minute to track your progress and track your overall energy levels. So here's how to do it. A few key pointers here. This is basically a breath hold test. However, there's a couple important distinctions. One is we're holding after a normal exhale, not after heavy breathing, not after a big inhale. We're not going and then holding. We're actually just breathing normally, normal breaths, in and out through the nose. And then we're going to do a normal exhale, pinch our nose, and we're going to hold not till our absolute limit, but until our first urge to breathe. Okay, that's the very quick version of how to do this. So we're going to breathe normally through our nose, exhale, and hold the nose and wait until you feel the first urge to breathe, and then you're going to take a normal breath. You'll know if you did it too long, because if you have to gasp for air and take heavy breaths, that means that you did more of a maximal breath hold time rather than a BOLT test, a body oxygen level test. So I'm going to put on the countdown clock here, and we're going to do this together. Okay, so we're going to take a couple normal breaths in and out through the nose, and then after a normal exhale, we're going to pinch our nose and hold our breath. Ready? And go. Okay, so pretty much everybody should be done at this point, I suspect, and maybe you were done a lot sooner than that. So basically, that test gives you an indication of what's going on in your body, and do you have dysfunctional breathing or not? So here's what this means and why it's important. The way that this test works is essentially that when you hold your breath, levels of oxygen stop entering your lungs, and no CO2, no carbon dioxide, can leave your lungs. So oxygen levels drop, CO2 levels rise. So what this tells you, how quick you feel the urge to breathe, is a reflection of your body's efficiency at extracting and utilizing oxygen to produce energy, and even more so, your body's carbon dioxide sensitivity, which is a critically important and very little known, even among doctors and health professionals, concept to understand that relates in big ways to our energy levels, our overall health, and our anxiety levels. Okay, now what's normal? Well, many years ago, it was established by this famous McArdle exercise physiology textbook. They measured it in young, healthy people and found that young, healthy people consistently have about 40-second BOLT scores, 40 seconds or more. That is what's optimal, okay, plain and simple. And we actually have a physiology textbook where researchers have scientifically determined that that is what's associated with good health. Now, here's why this matters. This is a reflection. Your BOLT score gives you an indication of how your nervous system and your brain are regulating your breathing rate, your breathing frequency, and your breathing volume. So a BOLT score of 10 seconds will look something like this. What you're seeing here is the time, you're getting an indication of the duration and the volume of each breath. So this is a 10-second BOLT score. This is a 20-second BOLT score. You see much lower volume of breath, and each breath is over the same period of time. You're seeing much fewer breaths. So each breath is much longer than in the 10-second version. And then at 30 seconds, even longer breaths and lighter breaths with less volume of air going in and out. And a BOLT score of 40 seconds is ultralight breathing, very small volume of air coming in and out over a very long duration of time. This is what healthy breathing looks like. So what does your BOLT score say about you? It gives you an indication of your sports performance and your fitness, and It also, most importantly, gives you an indication of your energy levels. Anything below 25 seconds of your on your Bolt score is an indicator of dysfunctional breathing. Now, if you're above 30, you're doing good. And if you're above 40, that is healthy and optimal. If you're below 25, that is an objective indicator that your nervous system and brain are regulating your breathing rate in a dysfunctional way. Now, we're going to talk about why that is, but the key point is that your breathing is dysfunctional and there are major consequences of that. Low Bolt scores reliably correlate to low energy levels and are a big cause of low energy levels. So here's what you need to understand. This, again, it's an objective test that gives you an indication of your body's energy levels. And as you work to improve your Bolt score, for every 5 seconds that you improve your Bolt score, you will notice, you absolutely will notice big improvements in your energy levels and reductions in your levels of stress and anxiety and your overall resilience. But again, big improvements in energy reliably correspond to improving your Bolt scores. So how do you improve your Bolt score? Well, we're going to talk about some of the keys to doing that. But one of the things I want you to commit to that is so important for anybody struggling with low energy levels and high anxiety levels is to use your Bolt score, to take it every day, to really commit to doing it first thing in the morning. You take your Bolt score, it takes less than a minute, very easy to do. Write down your Bolt score and also write down your energy level on a scale of 1 to 10 and your anxiety or levels of tension next to that, again, on a scale of 1 to 10. And track the trend. What you're going to see is as you do some of the exercises that I'm going to teach you here, what you're going to find out is that as you improve your Bolt score, your energy levels increase and your anxiety levels decrease very reliably, very predictably. Okay, now the next big key to energy is optimizing your breathing for deep oxygenation of your cells. So first thing to understand here is deep breathing, which is commonly taught in yoga circles, meditation circles, even a lot of breathing circles. They teach you that optimal breathing is something like this. You know, big full expansions of the belly, and you know, every breath should kind of open everything up fully. This is absolutely wrong. It is totally wrong information. It is a very common myth that is taught and perpetuated by many, many tens of thousands of people, and it's just simply wrong. So deep breathing is actually not a sign of health, and breathing more, this is the important part, breathing more does not get more oxygen into your cells. I know this is very counterintuitive, but it does not work that way. Yes, it's true, oxygen is the fuel that your muscles need to work efficiently. However, what most people need to know is that their oxygen saturation of their blood, of their red blood cells, is already maxed out. It's already at high capacity. And breathing more, taking lots of deep breaths, doesn't saturate your blood anymore, nor does it deliver oxygen better to your tissues. And this is a key distinction we're going to talk about. Because we're already at maximal oxygen carrying capacity in our blood, the solution is not to try to breathe more to get even more oxygen in. We're already maxed out. So deep breathing doesn't help us because we don't actually have a deficiency of oxygen. In fact, our blood carries a surplus of oxygen. We exhale 75% of the oxygen that we take in during rest, and even during exercise, we exhale about 25% of the oxygen that we're taking in on each breath. So there is no shortage of oxygen. There is no need to do deep breathing in order to try to oxygenate your body more. And what's more than that, deep breathing has consequences. We're going to talk about why. In a similar way to if you told somebody who was already eating sufficient calories to maintain their body weight, the key to having more energy is to eat even more food. It just doesn't work that way. Only thing that's going to happen if you do that is you're going to get fat. You won't get any more energy from it. And in fact, you will get less energy by overfeeding your body. So the same is true with breathing. Now, I want you to think of a young, healthy person and an older person, maybe dealing with heart issues or something like that. let's imagine these two people are going for a gentle walk together. Who of these two is going to be breathing the hardest and deepest on that walk? Which one of them is going to be breathing like that? Well, the answer is not the healthy person, not the young healthy person. It's the old unhealthy person. Okay, and the reason why is that we have misconceived of deep breathing as a healthy thing. Deep breathing in a resting state is not a sign of health. It's a sign of poor health. Okay, in a resting state, a healthy person breathes extremely slowly, extremely lightly, very small volume of air flowing in and out. This is a big misconception and a very important one. And I'll tell you, I messed myself up and gave myself chronic anxiety for years because I was trying to train myself to do these deep belly breaths all the time, because that's what I learned was optimal breathing, and it's just wrong. And it has big consequences for many people, including me. So chronic deep breathing actually mimics a state of physiological stress. So if you see me, when might you see me doing breathing like this? Well, you'd see me breathing like that after I maybe just did sprints up a big hill or something like that. And I was doing some really intense exercise, okay, which is a state of physiological stress. It's normal and healthy to be breathing like that in that context of when you're doing very intense physical exercise. But when you breathe like that in a resting state, you're mimicking stress, you're mimicking physiological stress, and your breathing actually ties directly into your nervous system. So your nervous system takes a cue from your breathing rate as to whether it should be in a state of stress or not. So if you compare someone who is breathing heavily versus breathing lightly, like if you think of a baby sleeping, for example, you're going to see very slow, very gentle movement of the belly and chest as it rises and falls during a very slow breathing. That is what optimal breathing at rest looks like. Very slow, very light breathing. So this is, again, a major misconception that people have, that deep breathing is a sign of good health, and it's just wrong. Now, the key is this is unconsciously or non-consciously regulated by your brain. So what is regulating it? And this is what we need to understand. There's two key things here. One is breathing frequency, how many breaths you take in a given period of time. So here you see 4 breaths taken over, let's say 15 seconds, and here you see 2 breaths taken over the same period of time. So there's the rate of breathing, and there's the volume of each breath, how much air is flowing in and out. So here you see much greater volumes of air flowing in and out on each breath compared to down here. So what is regulating this non-consciously? Why do some people breathe like this and some people breathe like this? Why are their nervous systems regulating their breathing differently? It's not oxygen that is influencing it. It's actually carbon dioxide that is the primary regulator. The rate and volume of breathing is determined by receptors in the brain that are sensing levels of carbon dioxide and regulating breathing rate and breathing volume in response to carbon dioxide levels, much like a house thermostat is regulating temperature in response to what's going on with the temperature in that house. Should I switch on the heat or the air conditioning? Okay, so these brain receptors monitor levels of carbon dioxide, and they monitor the pH, which correlates with and is influenced by levels of carbon dioxide in the blood. Okay, so when levels of carbon dioxide increase above a certain threshold, those CO2 receptors in the brain fire and they stimulate breathing. Okay, they stimulate increased breathing and bigger volumes of breathing to get rid of what it perceives as excess levels of carbon dioxide. This is the fundamental thing that is regulating your breathing rate. But here's the big problem. CO2 is not just a waste gas that our body needs to get rid of. Okay, many people think this is a big misconception, very common. We breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide. Okay, it's partially true. However, people think of carbon dioxide as just as this waste gas that our body's trying to get rid of. It's actually a very, very important substance that plays a critical role in our body. Our bodies need a certain amount of it. And the main reason why is that it helps in oxygen delivery to our cells. So CO2 is not just a waste gas, it is the secret key to getting oxygen into your cells. Here's the most important part to understand. Okay, we don't actually blow off all of the CO2. We don't take in a whole bunch of oxygen, use all this oxygen, and then blow off all the CO2. That's not how it works. We retain a whole bunch of the CO2 that is produced with each breath. Okay, there's a whole bunch of that CO2 that we are designed not to breathe out and expel. We're designed to retain it and keep it in our system. This is not a mistake. We're designed to do that because the CO2 is playing a critical role in our body. So what is going on? What is CO2 being used for? Well, here's what you need to understand. Your red blood cells, this is what carries oxygen in your body. That oxygen, when those red blood cells in the capillaries go to the sacs of air in your lungs, and that's where they pick up oxygen that you're breathing in. So when you inhale, okay, air is flowing into your lungs, and then that oxygen needs to go from your lungs into the blood and then bond to the red blood cells, so the red blood cells can carry them around and deliver them to the different tissues of your body. Okay, so that happens, that bond happens where oxygen connects to those red blood cells. Okay, but now those red blood cells are carrying that oxygen throughout our body. How do they know when to drop it off? Which cells to deliver that oxygen? Well, the answer to that has to do with CO2. And basically, this is something called the Bohr effect. And the Bohr effect talks about how at different levels of carbon dioxide in the blood, in the cells, where the blood is interacting with cells, that influences that bond between the oxygen molecules and the hemoglobin, the red blood cells. Okay, so they're tightly connected until they encounter higher levels of carbon dioxide, and those higher levels of carbon dioxide that is what allows that oxygen to separate from the red blood cells and go into the cells, where the cells can use that oxygen to produce energy. Now, if you have chronically low levels of carbon dioxide, which is what they're calling here as hypocapnia, that means low carbon dioxide levels, what that does is it heavily influences what's called the hemoglobin oxygen saturation, which is how tightly bound the oxygen is to the red blood cell. Okay, and at low levels of carbon dioxide, that oxygen is very tightly bound to the red blood cells. It is the higher levels of carbon dioxide that cause the dissociation, the disconnection of the oxygen with the red blood cells, so that oxygen can be dropped off in the cells and utilized to produce energy. So higher levels of carbon dioxide is the key to allowing oxygen to separate from the red blood cells and get into your cells, where it can be used to produce energy. So think of it like this. Carbon dioxide is the doorway that lets oxygen reach your muscles, your brain, your organs. If the door is only partially open, only some of that oxygen is going to be able to pass through. And if the door is wide open, that's when oxygen is able to flow through very, very effectively. So this is what's counterintuitive. When you take deep breaths, it doesn't help you get more oxygen to your cells. What it's actually doing is blowing off too much CO2 and lowering your levels of CO2 in your blood, which actually hinders delivery of oxygen to your cells. So over-breathing reduces the ability of oxygen to get delivered to your cells, where it can produce energy. Over-breathing is therefore one of the biggest factors that wrecks our energy levels and causes chronic anxiety. Now, the big key to understand here is, again, what's regulating this? How do some people get chronically wired into a state where they're overbreathing? And the answer is that chronic overbreathing means, first of all, it means breathing a volume of air greater than that which your body requires. And that can be breathing too much with each breath and breathing too frequently. And usually those two go together, okay? Overbreathing means too much carbon dioxide is being exhaled from the lungs and removed from the blood. So you have lower levels of carbon dioxide in your body than what's optimal. Now, what causes this? Well, there's a few different factors that cause someone to get wired into this state. One is low levels of fitness. If you've been mostly sedentary, if you're not a consistent exerciser, this actually causes your body to become dysregulated in terms of matching the levels of carbon dioxide that are being produced by your muscles to the breathing rate, to exhaling carbon dioxide. So being somewhat physically active, which means at least doing walking on a daily basis, is critical for that system to regulate properly. In addition, processed food, believe it or not, is another factor that influences this, because one of the big roles of CO2 in the bloodstream is actually to modulate the pH level, whether you have more acidic blood or more alkaline blood. So our body tries to maintain a very tight pH range, and CO2 is used in that process to maintain that level of the proper level of pH in the blood. Now, processed foods, as a general rule, tend to be acidifying to the blood. In the scientific literature, they talk about this as potential renal acid load. And we know, we can grade hundreds of different foods in terms of their PRAL value, their potential renal acid load value. And as a general rule, processed foods are acidifying to the blood. It doesn't mean they actually make your blood acidic, because we have this pH buffering system that's designed to keep our pH where it belongs. But when it taxes that buffering system, how does your body respond if there's too much acid load on the blood? Well, one of the things that it does is it lowers CO2 levels, because if it has high CO2 levels, then that actually will make the blood more acidic. So if you're eating a processed food diet, it's pushing the blood towards an acidic pH, and the body lowers levels of CO2 in response to that to try to keep the pH where it belongs. So in other words, the body lowers CO2 to adapt to a poor diet, okay? And you now have too low of levels of CO2 in response to that. Now, in addition, one of the other big factors that causes this is simply chronic stress. Chronic psychological stress itself tends to, the body's response to chronic psychological stress, or to psychological stress in general, even if it's not chronic, is to try to blow off CO2, which lowers its stress levels. So if you're in a chronic psychological state of stress, the body will chronically be trying to get rid of excess CO2. And over time, with enough chronic stress, will become actually wired into a state where it changes your breathing regulation, your breathing frequency, and your breathing volume to be chronically trying to de-stress the system. So the combination of these three factors, for some people, it's one more than the others, or for some people, it's all three at the same time. Each individual is different, but one or more of these factors wires into the brain and the nervous system to regulate breathing in a dysfunctional way so that you're chronically overbreathing. Now, people can be breathing 200 to 300% greater volumes of air than is actually required by them without actually noticing anything is wrong. And once that's wired in, their brain regulates that every minute, every hour of every day. And you are then chronically offloading too much CO2, which has consequences. So chronic overbreathing is one of the absolute biggest factors in low levels of energy and high levels of anxiety that almost no one is even aware of, not even doctors or health professionals. Most people have no idea about this critical link between your breathing and the way your brain is regulating your breathing with your energy levels, your oxygen delivery to your cells, and your brain's perception of anxiety, which we're going to talk more about. Okay, so quick recap here. Deep breathing is actually stress breathing. CO2 is not just a waste gas. It plays many critical roles in your physiology. The most important one is that it helps to deliver oxygen to your cells. This is the key to getting the oxygen to disconnect from the red blood cell, where it can be dropped off in your cells and used to produce energy. Number 4 is over breathing. Decreases CO2 levels and sensitizes the body to CO2. And number 5 is one of the biggest hidden factors in low energy levels and high anxiety levels is chronic overbreathing and chronic low levels of CO2. So how do we fix this? How do we fix our overbreathing and optimize our CO2 levels? Well, there's 3 fundamental steps here. One is to eliminate excess CO2 loss. And we do that by training the 4 keys to optimal breathing, which I'm going to tell you about in a moment. Number 2 is we improve our CO2 tolerance. And number 3 is we reset our CO2 threshold. So 4 keys to healthy breathing. We want light breathing, not deep breathing. Again, healthy breathing, it looks like a baby sleeping. Very slow, very light, very gentle. Okay, that's what optimal breathing looks like. 2, slow breathing, not fast breathing. Number 3 is nasal breathing, not mouth breathing. And number 4 is diaphragmatic breathing, belly breathing, not chest breathing. Okay, so very briefly, breathing slow is critical. Here you can see what this actually looks like. What we're shooting for is healthy breathing or optimal breathing. We want long breaths, especially long exhales, where we have something between roughly 4 to about 12 on the high end breaths per minute. That's what optimal breathing looks like. And the fewer breaths per minute you have, the more that's going to be an indication of good health and high energy levels and a very high CO2 tolerance. Okay, so that's what we're shooting for. Key number 2 is nasal breathing. Very, very important. Breathe through your nose, not your mouth. As Patrick says, Patrick McCowan, the breathing expert that I partnered with to create the Breathing for Energy program. Noses are for breathing, mouths are for eating. Okay, nasal breathing is so important. There's so many benefits of breathing through the nose rather than the mouth. But the number 1 benefit is that it produces lots of nitric oxide, which is this gas that plays a critical role in airway dilation and in blood vessel dilation. And ultimately, what that means is that when we breathe through our nose and we have higher levels of nitric oxide being produced, that is going to open up our circulation and allow for blood and oxygen to be effectively delivered to our muscles, to our brain, to our organs, where those tissues can produce energy effectively. If we're mouth breathing and we don't have nitric oxide present, those blood vessels are going to be constricted, and we're going to be chronically restricting the flow of blood and oxygen to the cells of our body. Now, nitric oxide has many, many benefits beyond just that, but that's the major one. Here's a cool little tip, by the way. Humming on the exhale like this increases nitric oxide production by 15-fold. So again, that's influencing circulation, but nitric oxide is also doing something else that's profound, which is that it's influencing the ability of upper respiratory tract infections, viruses, to take hold in your system. So we know that people who breathe through their mouth are at much higher risk of upper respiratory tract infections. And the reason why is that our nose acts as a filter, and it also produces that nitric oxide, which it turns out is strongly antimicrobial and antiviral. So we know that, for example, there's a spray that's produced by an Israeli company where you spray this thing in your nose, and it's a substance that dramatically increases the amount of nitric oxide that's present, and they found that it kills 99.9% of the virus SARS-CoV-2 that causes COVID. Okay, so nitric oxide kills viruses. Very, very important to breathe through your nose. So breathing through our mouth means no nitric oxide or very little nitric oxide production. Breathing through the nose increases nitric oxide production by 6-fold, and humming on the exhales increases nitric oxide production by 15-fold. Optimal breathing key number 3, breathe into your belly, not your chest. This is straightforward. People have probably heard this advice before. It's good advice. It's one of the more common pieces of breathing advice that's out there that is actually good advice. One of the key things to understand about this is that when we breathe through our belly, we are mimicking relaxed breathing. Okay, when we breathe predominantly through our chest, that is stress breathing, and that ties directly into our nervous system and our brain, which is either giving it stress signals or relaxation signals. So we want, the vast majority of the time, unless you're actually in need of, to do something stressful, to do something intense, running to catch a plane or something like that, or running to save somebody's life on the train tracks or whatever it is, we want to be in a state of relaxation the vast majority of the time. And so we want to be belly breathing rather than chest breathing. Key number 4 is breathe light to breathe right. So what we want to do is not just focus on the length of time that each breath takes, but also, more importantly, the volume of air coming in and out. So what you see on the left here and what you see on the right are breaths that are taking the same amount of time, but this one on the right has a much, much bigger volume of air coming in over 2 seconds and flowing out over 3 to 4 seconds than this one on the left. We want to be much more like the one on the right, very light breathing, very small amounts of air coming in and out. This is a nice way of explaining it. This is a Qigong and Tai Chi master, Chris Pei, who says there are 3 levels of breathing. The first one is breathing so softly that the person next to you can't hear you breathing. The second one is breathe so softly that you can't hear yourself breathing. And the third one is breathe so softly that you can't even feel yourself breathing. Okay, so let's do this quick breathing exercise to give you a sense of how you can start to entrain your nervous system to be better at this. This is one of the keys that we use to start to increase the body's CO2 tolerance and the brain's CO2 tolerance, so it can start to regulate breathing in a slightly different way. So I want you to put 2 fingers beneath your nose. Don't plug your nostrils, just put those 2 fingers beneath your nose and breathe in and out through your nose a few times. Okay, notice the air flowing on your fingers and get a sense of how much air, keep your fingers there, notice how much air is flowing in and out over your fingers. And now what I want you to do is just try to cut that in half so that you're breathing in half as much air and exhaling half as much air on each breath. And now I want you to make it even slower. So we're taking in half as much air and trying to do it even slower. Okay, and if you do that for 3 or 4 more breaths, you should start to have some air hunger building up. You should start to have some desire to go back to your normal breathing habits. Okay, and that's okay. That's the CO2 levels rising and your brain saying, oh, you need to take a breath, right? And so this is one of the very simple exercises that we can use to start strengthening our CO2 tolerance and changing our brain's perception of CO2. So just like lifting a weight leads to that getting stronger, when we challenge the muscle, it gets stronger. The same thing is true here. When we challenge the brain to tolerate higher levels of CO2 for brief periods of time, for a few minutes a day, the brain can learn to tolerate higher levels of carbon dioxide. So this is one of the very simple exercises that is key to starting to retrain the way your brain regulates your breathing habits. And this is a nice quote from Lao Tzu. He said, the perfect human breathes as though they are not breathing at all. So if you want something to shoot for, to give you a sense, again, of what is optimal breathing, it's not this. It's breathing that's so light, so soft, so gentle, so slow, so small in terms of the amount of volume of air flowing in and out that it's almost imperceptible. That's what we're shooting for. Okay, so 4 keys to healthy breathing. Again, light breathing, slow breathing, nasal breathing, and diaphragmatic breathing. Quick summary here is harnessing the power of CO2 and nitric oxide is the big key to supercharging oxygen delivery to your cells. We want higher levels of CO2 and higher levels of nitric oxide. That opens up the airways, opens up the blood vessels, allows for efficient oxygen extraction from the lungs, allows for circulation of the blood and oxygen to be delivered effectively to the tissues, and the higher levels of CO2 allow that oxygen to separate from the red blood cells and move into the cells and the mitochondria where they can be used to produce energy. Overbreathing decreases levels of CO2 in your body and sensitizes your brain to CO2 so that your brain starts regulating CO2 levels in a way where the threshold of CO2 is lowered and your brain is constantly sensing that CO2 levels are too high. And so it's constantly trying to blow off excess CO2 because that CO2 threshold is now being regulated too low. The brain is too sensitive to carbon dioxide. The number 3 is one of the biggest factors to getting rid of anxiety and increasing energy is eliminating overbreathing and increasing levels of CO2. Number 4, we must train our brain into a new automatic non-conscious breathing pattern, which is diaphragmatic breathing, nasal breathing, slow and light breathing. And number 5, we have to stop blowing off too much CO2. We need to increase our CO2 tolerance and reset our CO2 threshold. And I'm going to show you in a second one of the big keys to doing that. Okay, energy key number 3. This is how we reset our brain and nervous system out of chronic stress and anxiety mode. So the first thing to understand here is that our nervous system is regulating this. It's regulating not only our breathing rate, but it's regulating our alertness versus calmness. Our nervous system links the brain and body. This is what is integrating all of our sensations and perceptions and thoughts and actions. It's also controlling housekeeping functions like the non-consciously regulating our heartbeat, our intestinal and stomach contractions and digestion, and our respiration, our breathing. And again, regulating our alertness versus calmness. How stressed are we, and how relaxed or calm are we? So this is called the arousal continuum. On this end, we're alert, we're awake, but we're calm and relaxed. On this end, we're stressed and panicked and in a high anxiety state. Okay. Now, it is almost always the case that being on the calm side of this is better. This is where we want to be in terms of our day-to-day life. There are scenarios where, again, if you're running to catch a plane or doing intense physical training, where it's good to be in stress physiology. It's normal, it's healthy, it's proper in that context, but this is not where we want to spend most of our days. It's not optimal for almost everything, for work, for social interactions, for focus, for our mood and our sense of well-being. It's bad almost across the board. So we want to train our nervous system to be more in a state of relaxation. We also know there are many, many negative, harmful effects of stress, from dysregulating hormones to causing fatigue to depressing immune function to causing anxiety. But it's also the case that our nervous system and brain came built with mechanisms to both induce stress and turn it off. And when we understand that, we can use those mechanisms to our advantage. So when we're under stress, we often experience increased breathing rate, increased heart rate, and a racing mind and anxiety. And what most people do when they're in this state is they try to work on their mind. Mindfulness practices, meditation, cognitive behavioral therapy, other kinds of mental, psychological techniques to try to get rid of what's going on in the mind. Okay, but it is actually the case that it works way better to work on your breath. And the reason why this works way better to modulate your breathing, which decreases your nervous system's stress state, what's called your sympathetic nervous system. It's part of the autonomic nervous system, or it's the fight or flight part of the nervous system, which is essentially synonymous with being in stress physiology. Okay. And if we decrease the activation of that stress sympathetic nervous system, that is actually the fastest and most effective way to change what's going on in our mind, to decrease or eliminate the stress and anxiety. Why is that? As you probably have experienced, it's very difficult to try to use your mind to regain control of your mind when your mind's going out of control. This is really like trying to grasp fog or grasp smoke with our hands and hold on to it. It's almost impossible to do. With a lot of training, you can get some results, but I'll tell you, it's way faster, it's way simpler, and way easier and more effective to use your physiology, and specifically to use your breathing. And the reason why is because the breath directly interfaces with the nervous system. So it turns out that every time we inhale, what happens is the diaphragm moves down and the heart actually slightly expands. And when that happens, when there's more space in the heart, the flow of blood slightly slows down. And the heart then communicates a signal to the brain that says, oh, blood flow is slowing down. You better speed up the beating of the heart to respond to that. And the brain then stimulates the sympathetic nervous system to slightly speed up the heart rate and increase the flow of blood. And then on the exhale, it does the opposite. The diaphragm moves up, constricts the heart slightly, blood pressure and blood flow increase, and then the brain gets that signal and then actually responds to that by slowing down the heart rate by activating the parasympathetic, the relaxation part of the nervous system. Now, this is remarkable, and believe it or not, this happens on every single breath you take. Your brain is modulating the activation of the nervous system every breath you take. When you breathe in, it stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, speeds up your heart rate. When you breathe out, it stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, the relaxation response, and slows down the heart rate. So there is this direct interface between your breathing rate and the regulation of your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, fight or flight, or rest and digest, relaxation response. Okay, so the magic of breathing is that there is this direct interface with the nervous system. Now, what's also unique about this is, unlike heart rate or digestive functions, our breathing is this magical thing that we are able to control consciously, in addition to the fact that the brain is regulating it all the time non-consciously. So it's there, just like the contraction of muscles in our intestines or our heart rate is being regulated all the time by our brain non-consciously without us doing anything. The same is true of breathing, but the difference is we also have the ability to consciously and voluntarily say, well, I'm going to choose to breathe this way in this moment. And that gives us the blessing and this opportunity to use our breathing to directly interface with our nervous system. So what I want to give you here is the single fastest way to lower anxiety in your brain, which is the physiological sigh. So there's a specific group of neurons that is based in the brainstem of all mammals that control a breathing pattern called the physiological sigh. This is something that people and mammals do spontaneously during sleep, that humans do during crying and during states of extreme stress. So Mother Nature built this powerful calming technology into us hundreds of thousands of years ago. Everyone has these neurons in their brain, and it was designed into our biology specifically for the purpose of calming us. So we're all designed to do this unconsciously during certain circumstances of extreme stress and so on. But again, the beauty is we can also control this consciously. So here's how to do this. The physiological side is very simple. It takes only a minute to learn. Basically, it's a double inhale through the nose and an exhale through the mouth. Now, the trick of this double inhale through the nose, it's done in a very specific way. You do mostly a full inhale through the nose, and then you kind of do a powerful, quick little burst of additional air at the end of it, and then you do a long, slow exhale. The more you exaggerate exhales, the more you have shorter inhales and longer exhales, drawn out exhales, the more you are stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's one of the things going on here, but this double inhale is also doing something very special. I'll tell you about that in a moment, but let's practice this, how to do this first. Again, this is the single fastest way ever discovered to dramatically lower stress and anxiety levels in the brain and nervous system. So here's how we do it. Pretty full inhale through the nose, and then another quick burst, and then a long, slow exhale. Okay, again, double inhale through the nose with this rhythm. Okay, the beauty of this is it literally takes only 2 to 3 of these physiological sighs to rapidly, within seconds, reduce or eliminate stress and anxiety in the brain. So here's how this works. Turns out that your lungs are not just 2 big bags of air. They are actually composed of millions of little sacs called alveoli. And these sacs of air are not fully expanded all the time during normal breathing. So what happens when we do that second burst of that inhale, that goes like this. It fully expands all these little sacs of air. And then when we exhale from there, we get this huge offloading of carbon dioxide, much, much greater than a normal breath or even a deep breath. We get maximal offloading of CO2, a very quick reduction in CO2. And it turns out that CO2 levels actually play a critical role in levels of stress and anxiety. And we know this from a whole bunch of different lines of research. So for example, we know that in chronic breathing disorders, anxiety is extremely high. Another line of research is when you ask people to inhale solutions with 5% or 7.5% carbon dioxide, it rapidly induces anxiety. So we know from these kinds of studies that CO2 is actually a big factor in our brain's perception of stress and anxiety. We also know, and this is the flip side of this to really emphasize the point, we know that retraining our breathing habits, doing some simple breathing practices, can dramatically reduce our levels of anxiety. Okay, and this study is the effectiveness of diaphragmatic breathing on relaxation and relaxation training for reducing anxiety. This is another one where they did breathing therapy and looked at reductions in anxiety levels. This is another study, self-regulation of breathing as a primary treatment for anxiety. And this is another one just to show you how simple and how easy this is, and how little effort is involved to get serious results. This is a study in high school students where they gave these students 5 minutes of breathing practice and just 3 times a week. So a total of 15 minutes of practice over an entire 7 days. And just from 5 minutes done 3 times a week, they were able to dramatically increase their CO2 tolerance and dramatically decrease their levels of anxiety. So that's how powerful this is. So we know that CO2 is playing a big role in our brain's perception of anxiety. And we know that simple breathing practices, even done as little as 5 minutes of practice every other day or less than every other day, can yield a profound reduction in anxiety by increasing our CO2 tolerance. And the reductions in anxiety that they saw in these high school students directly correlated with how much the students improved their brain's CO2 tolerance. So again, this is one of the biggest factors in anxiety that almost nobody knows or talks about. No doctors, no even psychologists, psychotherapists, almost no one is even aware of this research linking breathing and breathing dysfunction to higher levels of anxiety. This is one of the most common causes of anxiety. And again, almost nobody is even aware of it. So the bottom line here is if you have a low CO2 threshold, it wires your brain into a state of chronic stress and anxiety. And if you have a high CO2 threshold, it puts your physiology into a state of relaxation and resilience and takes you out of chronic stress and anxiety mode. And again, the single fastest way to do that is to use that physiological sigh. Okay? 2 to 3 breaths is enough to rapidly reduce anxiety. This profoundly resets the nervous system. And the next step that you need to do beyond this to really to not just address stress and anxiety in the moment in real time to rapidly reduce it when you feel it, but to reduce stress and anxiety all the time is to actually rewire your brain's regulation of your breathing. And that's really what this Breathing for Energy program is designed to do. It's designed to take you from someone who's chronically over breathing to teaching your brain, rewiring and resetting your CO2 threshold, rewiring your nervous system to regulate breathing in a healthy and optimal way rather than in a dysfunctional way that creates low energy levels and high levels of anxiety. So quick summary here, the most powerful way to hack your nervous system to reduce stress and anxiety is the breath. Don't try to do it with your mind, engage your physiology. We want to both retrain the automatic non-conscious breathing pattern to increase our CO2 tolerance and reduce chronic tendencies to be in stress and anxiety, and also consciously use breathing techniques in the moment of stress to rapidly reduce anxiety. And number 3, we want to use physiological sighs, which are the technology that Mother Nature endowed us with for exactly this purpose. And she also fortunately gave us the ability to control it voluntarily. And you can use this during moments of stress. You can also use it during workouts, and you can use it before bed, especially if you're somebody who struggles to sleep. Energy key number 4, and this is the big key to really resetting your CO2 threshold and supercharging your energy production. It is intermittent hypoxic training, breath holding practices. There's a number of different ways of doing this. Fundamentally, what's going on here is this is all about your mitochondria. Mitochondria are the big key to energy production. These are the energy generators in our cells. And one of the big keys to understand about mitochondria is that between the ages of 20 to 70, most people lose the vast majority of their mitochondrial capacity. Their mitochondria, their energy generators in their cells, are literally shrinking and atrophying and dying off. Most people lose half of their mitochondrial capacity between the ages of 20 to 40, and then it gets cut in half again between the ages of 40 to 70. But it's also been shown that this doesn't have to happen. The primary reason this happens is not just because it's a natural product of aging. It isn't. It's actually the result of loss of hormesis in your life. What is hormesis? Hormesis is the process by which a mild or acute stressor increases the resistance to other stressors and increases the health, resilience, and vitality and energy of that organism, in this case, you. Now, there are many different types of hormesis. The classic one, of course, is exercise, but there are many other types of hormesis. Sauna exposure, cold exposure, different kinds of light exposure, UV light or red and near infrared light, which I've written a book about, intermittent fasting, nutrient cycling. These are all types of hormetic stress on the body. And the body, when subjected to these different types of metabolic stressors, can actually grow stronger and more resilient and more energetic as a result of them. Now, of all the different types of hormesis that I've experimented with over 25 years of studying health science, this type, intermittent hypoxic training, is the single fastest way I have ever found to reliably and predictably increase energy levels in people who are struggling with fatigue. It is truly amazing. And it also powerfully resets that carbon dioxide threshold in the brain and has an enormous impact on decreasing stress, decreasing chronic anxiety, and increasing resilience to stress in people who are struggling with anxiety and chronic stress. So this is just an amazing tool. It is It is a gift. It's one of the absolute most powerful health enhancing and energy enhancing and anxiety crushing technologies available. So intermittent hypoxic training is using breathing techniques to induce low oxygen levels in the blood and in the cells in the mitochondria to progressively train the mitochondria and train the cells to utilize oxygen more efficiently and produce energy more efficiently. There are many different confirmed scientific benefits to this type of training. So some of the benefits are improving mitochondrial function, inducing mitochondrial biogenesis. So you're stimulating the mitochondria to actually grow bigger and stronger and creating new mitochondria from scratch. You're decreasing inflammation, you're boosting immune function, you're increasing exercise performance, you're increasing nervous system balance, you're improving your sleep, you're increasing mental calmness and toughness, you're increasing your resistance to stress, and you're increasing your energy levels. Now, there are some other really cool layers of what this is doing to our physiology. It actually mimics altitude training. And in addition to resetting our brain for a higher carbon dioxide tolerance and a higher carbon dioxide threshold, it also reduces stress and fatigue of working muscles, and it improves recovery time. It decreases lactic acid production, which is a big factor in people dealing with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. And this is really cool. It increases the production of EPO, which is erythropoietin. This is a hormone that is produced when we go to altitude that stimulates the body to increase the amount of red blood cells in the bloodstream. So we know that just a few minutes of breath holding practices, a few rounds of breath holding practices done over just a few minutes actually causes a surge of red blood cells to be secreted from the spleen to increase the body's oxygen carrying capacity. So this is just awesome. Just a few minutes of training can literally cause more red blood cells to be floating around in your bloodstream carrying oxygen. Pretty incredible. So some of the mechanisms of how this is working in our body. Hypoxia, intermittent hypoxic training teaches your blood to extract oxygen more efficiently from the lungs. So we have these sacs of air in our lungs, these alveoli, and we have little capillaries with red blood cells moving around them. And the intermittent hypoxic training literally physically alters the structural interface between the air sacs and the blood so that the blood can actually extract oxygen and drop off carbon dioxide more efficiently than it could before. In addition, it does the same thing at the cellular level, where the blood and the red blood cells meet the cells and come into the mitochondria. The cells and the mitochondria all learn to extract oxygen from the blood more efficiently. And the mitochondria also learn to produce energy more effectively. And they actually grow bigger and stronger to be able to extract oxygen and utilize that oxygen to produce energy more efficiently. In addition, this is really cool, and I'll link this up with something in a moment. It helps protect your mitochondria from damage during stressors and during low oxygen states. Now, hold on to that thought because I'm going to show you something cool in a second. So we know there are studies where they actually have shown this, where they've done biopsies on, for example, mitochondria in rats subjected to intermittent hypoxic training. And what they've shown is the mitochondria grow profoundly and it physically alters the structure of the mitochondria so they can extract oxygen and pump out energy more efficiently. Now, this is really cool. These are brand new studies as of 2021, where they're looking at intermittent hypoxic training, or what they're calling hypoxic preconditioning, same thing, as an approach to COVID-19, severe COVID-19 prevention and COVID-19 rehabilitation. And what they're talking about here is teaching the cells to be more resilient in low oxygen states. And this is one of the fundamental things that's going on in COVID, that we now have a tool that we can use to help condition our body, precondition our body to be able to be more resilient and tolerate low oxygen states better. So our cells can actually handle, and our mitochondria can handle those low oxygen states without incurring so much damage and inflammation and triggering so much inflammation. which is one of the big problems in COVID. Now, I'm not saying this is a cure for COVID or anything like that. What I am saying is that it is a tool that very likely can be used to help prevent more serious outcomes from COVID by using this type of breathing practice. Now, some of these studies, everything's still brand new. So, of course, I'm not trying to make any medical claims here, but I do think it is very likely that this can have tremendous benefit in helping the body be more resilient to these infections and to recover much more easily. Now, this study here is saying the patient's prognosis recovery can be effectively improved by ameliorating the dysfunction of the respiratory system, cardiovascular systems, and immune function. And intermittent hypoxic training, preconditioning is a new non-drug treatment, has been applied in the clinical and rehabilitative practice for treating chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, diabetes, coronary heart disease, heart failure, hypertension, and other diseases. Many clinical studies have confirmed that intermittent hypoxic training can improve cardiopulmonary, that's heart and lung function, of patients and increase the cardiorespiratory fitness and the tolerance of tissues and organs to ischemia, to low blood perfusion and low oxygen states. So this is really cool, exciting research that scientists are already applying this technology in the context of helping to prevent severe COVID outcomes and helping patients recover. And I just wanted to link that up to show you, hey, I'm not just making this stuff up. There's a lot of scientists who are actually using this technology and even using it in the context of what's going on right now. Now, this is probably my favorite study on intermittent hypoxic training. They found in this study of over 100 people that intermittent hypoxic training may be a bona fide anti-aging treatment and works through a variety of different anti-aging mechanisms. Rejuvenation of mitochondria, decrease of oxidation, oxidative damage at the cellular level, increasing and improving the internal antioxidant defense system, decreasing lipid peroxidation, which is decreasing the amount of damage that's done inside the cell from various kinds of stressors, improving oxygen absorption, transportation, and utilization. Okay, think more energy levels. And they showed a variety of other things, increasing EPO, that's that hormone that increases red blood cells, and even facilitating stem cell dependent tissue repair. So there's so many different amazing anti-aging benefits of this type of practice. But of course, the big goals of this program, of the Breathing for Energy program, are increased energy and decreased anxiety. So how do you actually use this method in your life? There are a variety of different practices out there. There's fire breathing practices, pranayamas, where you do breath holding. There's Wim Hof or DMT or Tumo style breathing. There's a variety of different practices. There's also just breath holding practices while doing walking. That's another way of doing it. And one of the other big amazing aspects of this is this training. When you do these breath hold practices, you're inducing a mild state of physiological stress, but you're self-inducing it. Okay, and one of the big keys to stress is not just how stressed you are, but how you got there. Okay, did it happen due to circumstances outside of your control where your physiology is just kind of running wild, or did you consciously self-induce it from a good place, from a relaxed place and a happy place, right? And then once you're in that state, that makes a big difference. Now, the reason why is that this gives you an amazing opportunity to start to train your brain and train your physiology how to divorce physiological stress and the adrenaline dumped and all those stress hormones coursing through your system and that activation of your sympathetic nervous system, all those stress physiology mechanisms, how to divorce that from the mental state of feeling stressed. So this gives you, in other words, an opportunity to train yourself for calm and relaxation and resilience while under physiological stress. And it's hard to overstate the benefits that can come from that training. It's truly amazing how much you can make yourself way more mentally strong under pressure, under stress, and way more resilient to the stressors of life by using this as a way to self-inoculate yourself against stress. There's all these amazing physiological benefits, what they're doing to your mitochondria and changing the structural interface of, the lung blood interface and the blood cell interface, and growing your mitochondria to extract and oxygen and utilize oxygen to produce energy more efficiently. There's all these physiological effects, but there's also an equally powerful mental effect that can come from this when you do it right. So this gives you an overview of the new science of breathing and how we can rewire our CO2 sensitivity and our CO2 tolerance and CO2 threshold in our brain, and change how our brain is regulating our breathing rate and our breathing volume, which dramatically influences the delivery of oxygen to our cells and dramatically influences our brain's regulation of stress and anxiety. And ultimately, by going from dysfunctional breathing to highly functional optimal breathing, you can dramatically increase your energy levels and decrease your levels of stress and anxiety in your brain in an enormously powerful way. And that is why I've partnered with world-renowned breathing expert Patrick McCowan to bring you the most powerful and cutting-edge breathing course ever created for energy levels and reducing anxiety. And it is the Breathing for Energy program. It is truly an incredible program. It is, obviously I'm biased, but my goal in creating this program is creating the absolute most powerful breathing program on the market for increasing energy levels and decreasing anxiety. And I believe we have unquestionably succeeded in that. So here's what you get in the program. The first one is a much deeper dive into advanced breathing science than the one I just gave you here. And I show you step by step how to do everything and how these exercises are rewiring your physiology to increase energy levels and to decrease anxiety. So here's some of the things that you're going to learn. The 4 keys to optimal breathing, how to take control of your internal levels of CO2, nitric oxide, and oxygen to optimize your moment-to-moment energy, focus, and relaxation, neurological hacks to increase energy, relaxation, and focus, how to permanently rewire your brain for energy and focus, the 4 steps to rewire your nervous system out of stress mode with guided practices, why intermittent hypoxic training is the single fastest way to increase your energy I've ever discovered, and something cool I'm going to show you in a minute on that. Then there's 4 specific tracks, full programs within the program that have been designed by Patrick. There's one specifically for people with ME, CFS, fibromyalgia, burnout, anybody with severe fatigue or stress-related exhaustion and fatigue. This is a program all about recovering your energy, but doing it in a gentle way, right? The people who are dealing with more severe states of fatigue, if you have debilitating CFS, you can't jump straight into intermittent hypoxic training. You have to start with much more gentle practices, build that foundation and build your way up. And in this program, within the program, the track that you get here, you're going to get tools to rewire your brain and nervous system, learn how to breathe properly, and reset your brain's regulation of breathing so you can start to breathe optimally instead of dysfunctionally, which is rampant in people with chronic fatigue. This is a 7-week progressive, gentle program specifically designed for people with severe fatigue and with ME CFS. There's also a track specifically designed for people with sleep struggles, whether it's sleep apnea or snoring or insomnia. This module is specific for everybody who is struggling to sleep. And it is truly amazing what these practices can do to optimize your sleep. There's also another track specifically designed by Patrick for people with anxiety and panic disorders to dramatically lower stress and anxiety in the brain. Patrick has worked with thousands and thousands of people who struggle with anxiety and panic disorders, and he's designed this track specifically for them with unique exercises to address these specific problems. And in addition to those 3 tracks, there's also a track for people who are already healthy, already fit, already energetic, who are looking to take their energy levels to new heights and their fitness and performance, mental and physical performance, to new heights. And there's a whole track specifically designed for people who are like me, for example, who are already healthy, already fit, already highly energetic, who are looking to take things to the next level. And this has been a true game changer for me. Again, the single fastest way I found to increase my already high energy levels. This is another amazing layer to it. I'm really excited to say that I partnered with a friend of mine to create 6 full levels of progressive guided intermittent hypoxic training practices. These are video practices with music, with visuals. They're really fun. All you've got to do is press play and follow along. They'll guide you through the whole practice. And we've got, this is the big key, we've got 6 full levels of this to take you from 10 to 15 second breath holds all the way up to multi-minute breath holds. And this, by doing these practices, it is absolutely just a true game changer as far as increasing energy levels. This is remarkable, and having these 6 levels to guide you through from one week to the next, to start building up that capacity and building up your intermittent hypoxic training practice, that is the big key to results. So we've created these full 6 levels, again, from beginner to very advanced, and they will guide you. They will build that capacity in you, so you can go from level 1 or level 2, work on that for a couple weeks, and then go up to level 3. And within a couple months, you're going to be up at level 4, 5, and 6, and you're going to see huge changes in your health and your energy levels that parallel that. Again, very fun, simple practices. I do these every single day, every morning after I get up. Press play, you follow along, and it's really fun. And it's kind of like a game that you can play with yourself to challenge yourself to see if you can improve just a little bit more than the last time you did it. In addition, there's also several bonuses that I'm going to give you. One is Yoga Nidra. This is yogic sleep, and this is to retrain your nervous system into states of ultra deep relaxation and to retrain your breathing regulation into very, very light, gentle breathing. So this is not yoga in the traditional sense. It's not doing postures, and it's not anything exercise. It's actually guided meditation of sorts. It's a very unique kind of meditation that puts you in a totally different state of consciousness that takes you into what they call yogic sleep, which is this ultra deep state of relaxation. Very, very important for how we retrain the nervous system and brain to regulate our physiology and regulate our nervous system activation and our breathing in a new way. This is also an incredibly powerful practice for anxiety, and there's research showing this helps to recharge the dopamine and serotonin circuits in our brain and help rebalance our neurotransmitters, which influences not only energy levels, but sleep, but focus, and also, of course, our anxiety levels. Bonus number 2, there's also 2 guided practices. One is a shamanic meditative breathwork practice, and another one that is an energizing breathwork practice. It's 20-minute practice, and it layers in many different types of breathing that creates a really strong energizing effect. These are just fun practices to play around with and experiment with, learning how to change your physiology by using different kinds, and change your consciousness by using different kinds of breathing practices. And I've also included 2 elite level 20 to 30 minute guided intermittent hypoxic training practices to take you to special forces, Navy SEAL level. These are very advanced multi-minute breath holding practices, full blown, all out practices. These are long practices, 20 to 30 minute breathwork sessions. So if you want to take it to that level, we have that available to you. So if you're already fit, already healthy, you've already got big breathing capacity and breath hold time built up, and you're already a fit, energetic person, this is something that can absolutely take things to the next level for you. One of these practices is still too challenging for me, but this is right around the level that I'm working on. And number four, bonus number four, there's also another video where I take you through some of the things that I layer into the intermittent hypoxic training practices, how to combine them with different kinds of yogic bandhas that help pump cerebrospinal fluid and help train the pelvic floor muscles and other kind of little utilized muscles that help move energy and blood and circulation throughout our body. And there's also another video where I take you through how to use specific posture training practices to reshape your spinal posture as you do these breathing practices. And it's the single most powerful way I've ever found to address posture, is combining the intermittent hypoxic training breathing practices with these specific different postures that help stretch out and elongate and straighten the spine and the neck. Really, really cool to pair these together in this way. I've never seen anybody else doing it. It's something I created on my own. And really, it's been amazing for me personally, that the single most powerful thing I've ever found to help me address my spinal posture. In addition, you are also going to get an ultimate guarantee from me, where I am guaranteeing that you experience huge results in terms of increasing your energy levels, decreasing your anxiety levels, improving your overall health and resilience. And if you don't experience very noticeable, very profound benefits, we will give you your money back. No questions asked. All you got to do is send us an email and you get your money back. So you have absolutely nothing to lose here and so much to gain. This is an amazing program. And here, let me recap everything you're getting here. So you're going to get the module Advanced Breathing Science with me. The value is $200. You're going to get the Chronic Fatigue Fix Track, $200 value, the Sleep Fix Track, $100 value, the Rewire Your Brain Out of Chronic Stress and Anxiety Track, which is $100 value, the Advanced Energy Training Track, which is $100 value, the 6 levels of guided intermittent hypoxic training, which is a $300 value, the 4 amazing bonuses, which is a $300 value. And the total value of all of this is $1,300. But right now, you get all of this for just $297. We're doing a special on the initial launch here, $297. The price is going to go up after this weekend, and the price is going to go up to $497 right after that. So this will be your chance to get this program for 40% off, get $200 off the normal price, and get all of this $1,300 value for $1,000 off the total value, getting it at just $297. So get this program if you're someone who is struggling with your energy levels, struggling with chronic anxiety. Do yourself a favor. Get this program right now. This is honestly the single biggest game changer I have ever found in over 25 years of studying health science as far as increasing energy levels and decreasing anxiety levels. So get the program. Again, there's a 30-day guarantee. You can try the whole thing out for 30 days, do everything, learn everything I have to teach, and play around with all of the techniques and the exercises. And I'm guaranteeing that you will experience huge results in terms of your energy levels and decreasing your anxiety and improving your overall health status and resilience. And if for any reason you don't, or you're unhappy with it for any reason, all you have to do is ask for your money back and you got it, no questions asked. So you have so much to gain and nothing to lose. Take the chance on this. I think you are going to love it. And I think you're going to find this is a true game changer for your health and your energy levels. So let me make this available for you to purchase, and I'll turn on the chat and answer some questions for you.